Human geography is a perspective within geography. Geography, of course, is a discipline of location, of the world environment in general. And human geography is the study of the connection between humans and the environment. That is how people shape and affect nature and the places where they live, and at the same time how nature affects or shapes the places where people choose to live. There are important questions that we ask in a class like this, human geography, and I draw a lot from our students because we have such a diverse student population that each of them brings something, even if they never left their neighborhood in Brooklyn, to give just an example, or if they also come from so many different parts of the world that they can definitely understand the different effects of a natural disaster. For instance, an earthquake in Nicaragua definitely has different repercussions than one in New York City, or any other environmental hazard like that. Actually, that's one of the basic interactions that we discussed from the first week of classes. We talked about how humans affect the environment and how the environment also affects humans and human activities. So, and sometimes we see that humans are not so good with the environment or with nature, and we try to develop that kind of awareness of what we can do. And this is a moment where we also draw from my expertise in anthropology that is based on understanding diversity, promoting tolerance and respect for the dignity of all peoples. What can we learn from other cultures, how other cultures relate to the environment? And there are so many examples that they can bring from various cultures and civilizations where people and nature were living more in a balance than what we see today. Another important element that we discuss in a course like this is that of globalization. Everybody talks about globalization. Nobody knows what it is, but we live by it, and it has to do with this sense of being increasingly interconnected in the 21st century, but at the same time we are linked through in different ways, in uneven and unequal ways, through different socioeconomic and cultural processes, and there are still diverse outcomes in different parts of the world. For instance, a McDonald's in Indonesia is very different from one in Peru, and the hamburgers taste better, different, as I have heard. So we talked about these kinds of issues. It's a 100-level class, and it's really interesting and exciting for many of my students. Not everything that comes from corporations is necessarily negative, but people need to make informed decisions, and that's actually one of the problems of environmental movement in different parts of the world, particularly in the third world, when you impose onto other people the need to become more aware. That doesn't mean either that indigenous groups are all living in harmony with the environment, because we know that there are several practices, for instance, this Sweden agriculture that is slash and burn, that a lot of many horticulturalist societies practice, is not necessarily good for the environment, because when you burn an area, there are all these fumes and things that are not necessarily good. So, many times environmentalists have asked indigenous groups to stop some of these practices, and not many have a chance to say, no, we have been doing this all our lives or so. But some groups in Brazil, one of these interesting countries because of its size and its relevance, stood up and talked about some kind of environmental imperialism when representatives who mostly come from more powerful countries are imposing those standards evenly to everybody. So they said, for instance, who are you to tell us to stop cutting trees when the biggest damages that have happened in this planet since the industrial population come from post-industrial societies like the U.S., for instance. The U.S. is the biggest polluter, the biggest responsible for most of the damage to the environment. And of course, there is the need to revert that process, but also there needs to be a way of doing this in a more amicable and horizontal way without imposing and provoking these kinds of reactions. I think that it's really great to see. I think that there are some students, especially the younger crowd, that they really know that there's something that needs to be done, and they are ready to give examples of what to do. Those who come from different countries, particularly from Europe, they seem to be a lot more aware in general terms. French, British, or people who have migrated there before coming to New York sometimes notice that there has been a little bit more awareness about, for instance, you go to the grocery market, to buy your groceries, you don't need to get all these bags. And I think that New York is changing, but not at the pace of other places. I'm not sure how it is in other parts of the U.S., but everybody has something to say and some suggestion to give, to make.